welcome to the second edition of the Kick Off the Convo podcast. My name's Gary Morgan. I'm from the local NHS. We'll let everyone introduce themselves in a second, but first of all, really pleased to be joined by Russ Penn, first team coach at Kidderminster Harriers. So Russ, really appreciate you taking the time out to join us and to help share some of your experiences. If you haven't seen the first edition, the Kick Off the Convo podcast is all about mental health, picking up various different topics and themes around mental health as part of our Now We're Talking campaign, all about raising awareness of local services and support for people. Loosely, this one is going to be themed around how do you have a conversation if you notice that somebody you work closely with or you're associated with is struggling a bit, what are the signs to look out for, and then how you can broach that subject safely and feel confident in doing so. That's the rough kind of outline of what we're going to cover, but it might go off in various different directions, so we'll see how we go on. Just a quick round robin then of intros, if that's okay. So, Meg, over to you.
I'm Meagan. I'm the Mental Health Marketing and Service Improvement Officer at the Health and Care Trust. So I sort of look after the Now We're Talking campaign and everything mental health there.
Cheers, Meg. Scott.
So I'm Scott Russell from the Herefordshire Football Association. I'm a football development officer there, and I'm a mental health champion as well.
Matt.
Thanks, Gary. Yeah, I'm Dr. Matt Stainsby. I'm a Consultant Clinical Psychologist in local mental health services in Herefordshire.
Issey.
So I'm Issey, and I'm the Football Development Officer for Disability, Youth, Male and Inclusion for the Worcestershire FA.
Cheers, Issey. Well, it'd be remiss of us, now we've got Russ, not to start off with a bit of a football question. So Russ, just to kick us off, really, we're getting in towards the business end of the season, I suppose. Just a quick summary of where you're at, how things have gone. Are you where you expected to be? And I guess what's the targets for the next 2 or 3 months?
Yeah, thanks, Gary. Terrible questions, that is, mate. Terrible questions. So, yeah, this season has been a bit of an indifferent season. I've got to say I'm probably disappointed personally of where we are, but on a personal note, learned so much this year compared to the years that I've been before. It's my third year in the job. It's my first job, and I've had some fantastic times. Managed my 100th game last week, so in that itself, I'm quite proud. So yeah, listen, got 21 games to play for. We're still in the mix, and we'll see where we can go.
I was just interested in it. We talk about having conversations and the role that people might have, and the role of a first team coach or manager these days at your kind of level. I guess there's the tactical and technical side of things. And I guess when players are at your level, there's only so much you could probably do technically to improve them. How much of what you do is around man management, and on that, how much is about understanding the characters you're working with and really getting to know them?
Yeah, really good question. I think at our level, albeit we're full time, my role isn't just football manager. It's basically under the chair and managing the football club. And yeah, probably man management is probably my biggest strength. I probably had the best education in that through the COVID years, where we had 2 seasons that broke down. But you still have to pay the players and you still have to talk to the players every day. So the well-being of that has helped me big time in that subject. But yeah, listen, we're a bit of everything, bit of a coach, manager, tactician. So yeah, I wouldn't say I'm great at all, but I'm probably okay at a few things. Yeah.
Yeah, and that psychology of understanding people, I suppose, and particularly people who are putting themselves out every Saturday afternoon, maybe getting criticism, maybe getting plaudits, and understanding the characters, as I say, and how people respond to that. It feels like it's a big part of the role and possibly an increasing part of the job as well.
Yeah, you're right. It's definitely getting tougher with social media and everyone having their say nowadays, and every player under 30, the majority anyway, is on the phone within 2 minutes of the game, reading good and bad comments. I can only advise that because it did me no good back in my early days when it was just the internet sites. But it's tough nowadays because they read everything. Everyone's their best friends when they're doing really well, and then they're the worst enemy when they're not. So it's managing that and dealing with that.
And do you see that when people are, taking personal issues and concerns they might have, worries outside or off the pitch, when they're taking it on the pitch, can you tell? I mean, can you, at what point do you sort of take someone's performance or form, if it's dipped or they're off it, and think, actually, is there's something else going on there? At what point would you start to have that kind of thought or conversation?
Well, first and foremost, I like to be an open manager, so I like people to come in and just be open with me. I think that's the best way to be, open and honest, and I want people to share their thoughts, disappointments, everything with me. That's easier said than done. But you know what? On the flip side, some people get the release on the football pitch, and all the troubles go, and that's their good place, that's their safe place. But others take it into the game, so it's a balancing act, really, mate. But it's a tough one for me as well, because I'm employed to pick the best 11 to win the game, and it don't matter how they're feeling, I'm judged on results. So, that's a different situation completely in the back room, which no one really understands, bar me and the players.
Yeah. I might just maybe bringing you in on that, in terms of people struggling with various issues in their life. Is it common that manifests itself in how they perform at work, whether that's on a football pitch or in a factory or in an office? Is that something that kind of a sign that people might look out for?
Yeah, I mean, there's only so long, isn't it, that we can keep our troubles inside. And, we know that men in general try and do that very often. We try and keep things hidden, but there comes a time where it, it comes out. And mental health problems and just kind of, issues with well-being can manifest in a lot of different ways. And I think rather than specific signs as such, I guess it's important to think about, just the different ways that people come off their game, so to speak. And the things you might notice might be people seeming a bit down or preoccupied, starting to not be involved in things quite so much, just seeming a bit different. I guess they're the signs that are feeling a bit off, might be the kind of signs that are worth then starting a conversation up.
I guess some of that, Scott and Issey, from the work you've been doing around sort of awareness and training at sort of a more grassroots level, some of this applies, doesn't it, not just to the kind of level that Russ is working at, but everybody working in sport or in football who's involved and engaged with lots of people, parents and kids and people that play Sunday league stuff. And it's a bit of a responsibility that we all have to kind of look out for each other, spot the signs, see things that, as you say, as Matt says, might be just looking a bit off for somebody. Is that part of the kind of the coaching and awareness work that you do at the FA as well? Coming to Scott first, maybe.
I think, well, obviously with the FA generally, the safeguarding aspects has really cranked up over the last few years. I'm one of those where I think it comes down to transparency and honesty, and being aware of who you work with, who your coaches are, what the parents are like. There's a whole factor to take in. And also it's letting those that maybe are vulnerable or are struggling with their mental health to make sure they know where they need to go to if they're struggling for whatever reason, or they feel that they need to talk to different people or certain people. So for me, it's the safeguarding part from an FA point of view is really important in all aspects, even into the professional game as well.
Yeah, definitely. I kind of echo what Scott said. Safeguarding is kind of, it's that our prime focus and everything. We want to keep kids safe, whether it's an under 16 boy or girl playing football, or whether it's, a guy in his 50s playing Sunday league football. It covers everyone and anyone, whether you're a player, coach, volunteer. We want to try and, as much as we can, support clubs and equipping them to be able to have the tools themselves to help people within their own club, whether that's through an idea that we have where it's almost a mental health champion or mental health hub within clubs. I think that those things will be really important, especially when you're kind of you'll go through your GCSEs or your A levels at school, you might have troubles at home, you come to football, something might kick off as well, and all those different things might collate all together. And, I suppose football is, as Russ said, it's an outlet for some people. It's a bit of relief being on that football pitch. So as much as we can do from an FA point of view, the better, really.
Yeah, we talked about that idea, haven't we, through the campaign of having, even at grassroots level, having an ambassador, somebody who's just perhaps a little bit more informed, who knows what's out there, who knows what support to signpost people to, would be a really good thing to do. Russ, just coming back to your sort of role and remit in Kiddie Harriers, but for most of us who've never been in a sort of dressing room environment at that kind of level, has it changed? Is it different now? Are we much more sort of sympathetic or aware of what's going on, or is it still the kind of the stereotypical environment that some people might think it is?
Listen, I left school at 16 and I played football till I was 34 professionally, so I don't know any different to the changing room. But it's certainly changed, since early 2000. I class myself as one of probably the last age group of the old school a little bit, where everything was just, anything was said and you were a bit more thicker skinned. But I also, I understand the way things are going. I've got a 14-year-old boy who's on his phone all the time, and he's, the modern era where he's at. And I've also got 16 to 20-year-olds in my changing room who are just live on the phone. And that's the way of life nowadays. And I think it's sad, but it's the way it is. And I've got to get to grips with that. So I have to manage 35-year-olds, centre forwards, and a 17-year-old right back. One's got financial trouble. One doesn't know what financial trouble is. One's got a wife, divorced. The other one is going out every Saturday night and doing what he's got to do. That is the way the changing room is. It's just so diverse. And to manage 24 lads, who some are playing, who aren't playing, it's difficult at times. But going back to your first question, there's a changing room change, 100%. Yeah.
With your coaching team, would you say they have their own specific role within the group? Obviously, you being the manager, you've got to be the hard line at the end of the day. But with the other coaching guys, do they have a role within the changing room?
Good question, Scott. I don't think they have a particular role. What we try to do, Scott, between the 4 staff members and a couple of part-time is they sometimes see things that I don't, and then we talk about it, and then that's when it opens up. It's very hard because, what is mental health nowadays? How do you diagnose mental health? I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I have to go off experience. And like Matt says, he's just not right today. That's how I diagnose it, Matt. He's just not quite there, or it's been a couple of weeks now where something's going on and we'll pull him in for a chat. And like you said, 9 times out of 10, the players that we've got, because we sign good people and good players, they do open up because, like Matt said, you can't bottle it up for too long. And if you do, I think the signs are there to be seen.
Did you see some kind of correlation, Russ, between that kind of changing room environment when there is that togetherness, there is that maybe openness and that, I don't know, mutual peer support, for want of a better phrase? Do you see that as a key component to producing results? Is it that important that you have that spirit and togetherness and unity within the group as well?
100% for sure. But that doesn't mean we had one of the best years in Kidderminster's history last year. And there were players that played over 40 games that season, which is 95% of the season, who were struggling off field. Now, that doesn't mean that just because the football's going well, everything's fine, because there were personal issues outside on the pitch, which was taken over. This year, we're not doing as so well, and the group seems a lot more mentally stronger. So there's no wrong and right, mate. I've had mental health issues in my in-laws family, so I kind of know signs, and I've probably got a bit more education than others. But like I said, the changing room and the personnel bring people, and it's a tighter knit, and they can open up to others and the peers. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's a healthier changing room.
And you mentioned at the start about some of those examples. I think you touched on a couple there, and obviously, without going into people's details and personal circumstances, just talk us through a little bit about that experience of people that have been under your wing, really, who you've noticed issues with, how you'd go about it at Kiddie, what the kind of outcomes have been, if you can. That'd be really, really useful.
Yeah, well, I've got six big factors that I've found in the last 3 years that have probably been the most prominent ones, and that's one is social media. 2 is fans' expectation. We get 2,500 every week. They're on social media, booing, cheering. You get that. Finances, money off the field, relationships, wife, partners, injury, probably the biggest one, especially at our level, because you are stuck on your own with a physio. We probably haven't got the medical care that the top teams have. So you're on your own a lot with your own thoughts. And probably the one under that is form, how they are playing at the time, which beats they beat themselves up. Obviously, you've got criticism from me because I'm expecting the form to be better, but then they've got the self-criticism as well. So they're the big 6 for me. And I'd say, over the 3 years, I've done a lot. Probably the injuries is the biggest one. And Scott can probably relate to that.
Yeah,
Russ, do you find if you don't get maybe the result you want at the weekend, can that reflect in your personal life, or have you managed to kind of work on that? How do you cope?
I'm the worst, and only my wife will be able to tell you that, and my kids. I am probably the worst person to live with, but then it makes me feel better when David Moyes says he doesn't sleep after he loses as well, and he's the top of the top. Do you know what I mean? So, no, when you're full time and it's the job you want, and all, it's a result industry. Unfortunately, you take it home with you, and the managers who say they don't are either lying or they're extremely, extremely strong-minded, because I don't know how you don't. And even when you're doing well and you win, you're that elated and that high, you're just thinking about the next win. So you start again and the process starts, and you never have a day off, and you never have a time off. No worry. You know, I had full bonds of hair about a year ago, and it's just somehow disappeared. And I look at every manager at the moment, like Graham Potter, they've got bags under their eyes. It looks terrible. And I think, what are we doing? But it's like a drug, you know what I mean? You just keep coming back.
I've been a Birmingham City fan. I think it's the same for supporters as well as players and managers, to be fair. And I think, Issey, from an FA perspective, Russ was talking there about, you know, injuries being a massive issue, the financial element probably linked as well, but, you know, injuries and financials and stuff. From your perspective, is there enough of that kind of welfare support? Has that increased a lot for players? Obviously, you know, perhaps at the top sort of Premier League level, it might be different, but for those issues, is that wraparound support there now?
I think it kind of varies. I mean, as you said, the professional game is very different. So obviously, you know, they get in that care, they get in attention, rehab, etc. You know how much they get cared for at the top. But I mean, as soon as you like go through academies, etc., you know, the support is still there. Obviously, it's going for the player because they're not actively, you know, participating in the session. They're kind of on their own. But at a grassroots level, it's kind of really up to the club what they want to do. I mean, we can't really manage as such what the clubs do, but I really do hope that managers do all they can to try and include those players as much as possible when they can. I know they can't participate actively, but you know, whether that's a team talk, tactic session, because I know full well from a player perspective, when I did my ACL back in sixth form, I was going to go to an academy to play football and to study at the same time, and then that injury just ruled me out for about a year. So I can tell you firsthand the effects on your mental health when you can't play football and knowing you want to take a certain direction with it. It's kind of gutting, really. So you just have to work hard as a player just to kind of ignore the negative mindset, try and look at the positives, which is much easier said than done. But yeah, I'd say that the coaches and your fellow players, really, your teammates, they have a huge effect on you, how they can support you, and the club as a whole as well.
I think, Matt, what we're talking about there, I think, is there's, and you'll be able to explain this much better than me, so forgive the clumsy sort of language, but there's mental health, isn't there? And then there's life issues, you know, Russ mentioned, and Issey there, injuries, you know, that affect and disrupt your plans. There's relationship issues, financial problems, which most, you know, lots of people will be experiencing at the moment. Is there support around, or are we doing enough in society, I guess, to recognise those issues? You know, it might manifest itself in stress, worry, depression, anxiety, but there's those life issues which have a massive impact on how people feel and their general well-being, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important we don't think of mental health as being, you kind of, you have good mental health or you have bad mental health. There's every stage in between. And you know, we're all bringing histories to our current life situations, and some of those have been trickier than for other people. But life has knocks and ups and downs, and, you know, the wins and the losses, or things that happen in terms of, you know, injuries or other unforeseen things. And that stuff it knocks us, it has an effect. And so I think it's important to be thinking about what we can do to, not just when things get to the point of a mental health problem as such, but, you know, how we're looking after ourselves you know, when any of those things are having an impact on us, certainly.
And often one of the barriers for people, you know, we talk about the importance of talking to your mates and talking to work colleagues and whatever. And one of the barriers is sometimes you can feel, particularly, especially if you're not in that environment, if you're not a mental health worker, you can feel a bit vulnerable. You can feel like, you know, I'm going down a road where I'm not too sure. And what if I say the wrong thing? Is that something how would you sort of deal with that, Russ? Have you ever been in that situation where, you know, you're a bit nervous about having the conversation because it's still a bit of a taboo subject for lots of people? You're not quite sure what's going to come from it, and you're concerned about saying the wrong thing or making it worse. Is that something that you're conscious of? And
yeah, I am. Especially when I talk in a large group, because you only have to say something now, it affects someone in some way. Do you know what I mean? Or, oh, you're not allowed to say that anymore. Yeah. So I'm still learning and being educated myself, and you learn something every night on social media, what you can and can't say. But no, like I said, I think from the start, I think I've made myself a very open manager, very relatable. I always bring my own family and kids into it, because at the end of the day, that's what I work for, is my own family, my children. So I'm a real person behind the manager. I like to think I'm strong-minded, with the upbringing I've had and the diversity I've had going up and around the country and taking my family everywhere, probably being a little bit selfish. But I can relate to them as well. I had kids at a young age, so I think I can relate to a lot of things they worry about, but that doesn't mean that everyone comes to me. My issue is, 90% of my players are part of the PFA membership scheme. You have to play in the league to have been a PFA member of some type. You only have to be there for 1 year and you're a PFA member for life. And I've had this conversation. I still don't think they do enough for the mental, and they're probably learning as well. But we get probably 2 emails a year to say, oh, please talk, and that's it really. I think the higher you go up, you get treated a lot better, but there's still the same people, still the same person. And I think there could be more done down the line. It shouldn't be on me all the time. Do you know what I mean? And my other coaches to ask if they're okay, because we've got other pressures that we have to deal with as well.
You've got quite an open culture there at Kiddie, and that's what you're trying to foster, but there'll be other areas where it's not the case, it's not the same, and then you end up with that inconsistency potentially, which is an issue. I mean, in terms of practical support, Matt, obviously Russ is talking about dealing with players in a football environment, but there'll be people working across various different industries who will have similar scenarios, people they work for, people they're in contact with, who they're just, something's not quite right. How do you broach the subject? How do you start it? How do you kick it off? How do you keep yourself safe when you're having a conversation, when it's not your world, it's not something you're familiar with? What sort of top tips, I guess, would you recommend for people?
It's a big worry, isn't it? We all these questions come up. What's the right thing to say? What's the exact right way to approach it? And I think we can stumble a lot with some of those kinds of things, when actually the most important thing is just that we start a conversation in the first place. I think that it's better to say something clumsily than to not say something at all. But just checking in with people, saying, are you all right? How are you doing? Persevering a little bit with that if it does feel like something isn't right, I think is really important. Just asking some of those questions: how have you been? What's happening? And listening, showing curiosity and listening to the answers. I think we're often quite quick to jump in with problem solving, but just letting people talk, listening, showing that whatever they're saying, it's not weird or strange. I think that's a good place to start.
It's an important one, actually, isn't it? You sometimes think that if you're going to start a conversation, you've got to solve all the problems too. And some of those problems you're not going to be able to solve. And I guess, Meg, that comes on to the role of signposting and giving access to credible resources and things that people can do and see, which I suppose is what you come into work to do, isn't it? And we do a lot of that, don't we? And we're looking to do a bit more, particularly around having those other professionals having conversations and being supported, whatever industry or role they have.
Yeah, I think with the Now We're Talking campaign as a whole, I mean, it says what it is on the tin. It's all about getting people talking and making sure that those resources are available for you, like Matt said, with all levels of mental health, that it's not just good or bad. You can get support from keeping your mental health good, right through to if you need urgent support, which is available on the website as well. And so we've got those list of resources there, not only for people struggling with their own mental health that need the support, but also the resources to help you have those conversations and encourage that sort of open nature.
Cheers, Megan. We'll make sure the web links are available for people. There's resources for professionals. Again, how do you have a conversation with people? What signposting suitable? Even mental health first aid training links are on there as well, so you can perhaps educate yourselves a bit more on what's available and what might come up.
If I can just jump in for a sec, Gary.
Yeah, of course.
It's really nice for us hearing some of the things you were saying there about like the culture that you're creating in the first place for people to be able to come to you. Because I think there's something about, if we wait until there's a problem and then we start to talk about things, it can be pretty awkward and kind of out of the ordinary. If it's quite a normal thing that we say, look, I'm here if people need me, door's always open, or just that there's a culture of already talking about the kind of things that happen in life and how, we're all human beings, we get knocked by things. It normalizes it a bit more. And so those conversations then get easier to start off as well. So that was great to hear.
Yeah, and do you know what? I'll probably speak on most managers, probably not everyone, but we've all gone through it, us as managers. We've all been in the game. We've all had different other managers. Some are tough, some are not as tough, some are soft, some are honest, some are liars, and you go through it all, I think. And that's how I like to be perceived. I'm a young manager, and I think I can relate to the players a lot more the way it's going, especially having an older, a teenager as well. And listen, that's my way. Doesn't mean it's the best way, but I think if you get that respect from that side, I feel they give you a little bit back as well. It's very hard when you give them a roasting on the Saturday to say they're not good enough, and then on the Monday saying, "You're right, son, how are you?" But that's life. That's life. And I like to say that's one of my perks, to be honest, just man managing at the moment.
Do you think alongside that, obviously we have this notion that men often struggle to talk and sort of share that emotion, but I think on the football pitch, that's one of the places that those emotions really do come out, and you sort of see all the time players collapse of exhaustion, both physical and mental, on the pitch at the end of the game. And sort of more recently, you've seen, I'm an Aston Villa fan, but I know we had our player Leon Bailey at the end of the game a few weeks ago that he'd missed a shot on goal, and he was distraught at the end of the game. And I think you see that a lot more now than you would have perhaps 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, possibly. I think I can only speak to myself because I don't play anymore, so I don't know how exhausted they are now. But I am, even though I haven't played, I am mentally and emotionally drained come 5 o'clock. A full week of preparing for a game, and then the 2 hours from 3 till 5 is just takes you. And on a Saturday night, so I've got no effort to go out whatsoever. I hit the sack straight away. So for players to have that and physically play for 90 minutes as well, and then get the bodies ready for a Tuesday night game, and then the following Saturday, and then the following Tuesday, you forget very quickly, and fans forget how much it takes out of you. And they'll all have this, perception of, oh yeah, but the footballers are doing what they're. No, we're not just football. It's a job, and we're made to work hard every day, mentally and physically. And I think people forget that sometimes.
I think it's like you say, it's full on, and also football's very antisocial. When you think about it, it's weekends, it's evenings for games and everything, and I think that has had effect with players and their relationships. Even with if it's professional, semi-professional, grassroots, it's still full on and antisocial. You look at young aspiring coaches; they normally start at academies that train in the evenings 3 times a week, and then are away all day on the Saturday or maybe even the Sunday. It's tough. It's a tough business to be in. And again, you look at grassroots or again semi-professionals. They might only train maybe once a week and then a match day, but for the managers and the coaches, it's probably still 7 days a week because, like you say, Russ, you've got to plan things, you've got to do training. There's a lot to do there. So it is a full-on sport, and I think it's one of those that you've just got to realise it is mentally tiring. I think, like you just said, Russ, there on a Saturday, once you're done, you're relaxed, but you're knackered, aren't you? And then you've got to try and pick yourself up again to go again. So
yeah. No, Scott, obviously you can relate. No, it's a drainer, but there's something that pulls you back. Why do we all do it? That's my question to football people. Why do we do it? Because I think the goals are so big. Everyone wants to get to the Premier League, if not the Championship, League One, League Two, or it's just personal preference of being in the game. So listen, it's for me, I love it, but it's definitely it takes its toll on a week. Yeah. Especially when you don't get the result at the end of it as well, Scott. And then you get your chairman ringing you on the Sunday. You think, oh my God, here we go. Hello, chairman. You're all right, mate. Yeah. Not good, mate.
I've had it before where I've had fans who have been verbally abusing me as though I've got a say in what the team selection is going to be for games. When I was just a goalkeeping coach, I had no say on that 11, but it doesn't matter to them. We're all under one umbrella, so you've got to take the rough with the smooth, I suppose. But yeah, you've got to be thick-skinned, and I think that also is where the problems lie. Because I think some people think, well, no, I can't be shown weakness, and if it's poor mental health, that's a weakness. So that's where, like I say, to be open and transparent, I think is the way forward. Easier said than done, I know, but it is.
Yeah, there was a great video on social media last night, and it went round, so I'm not sure if you saw it. The old Cardiff manager, Hudson, His wife showed the video of Hudson telling his kids that he'd got the Cardiff job, and they were elated, jumping all over him. Massive achievement. And within 9 months, he showed the same video of him telling them that he got sacked and they're packing the bags out of the schools that they've just made friends with and going home. But no one cares about that. Do you know what I mean? They just see the next manager come in, and he's now got to deal with that bit of embarrassment, the non-working, what's he got to do next, going back home. And, a really volatile industry, the game is. And that's always in the back of my mind as well, of, what's around the corner.
Issey, were you going to come in? Sorry,
yeah. Ross, do you think, in terms of kind of like looking at academy setups and everything there, do you think that clubs need to do a little bit more in terms of supporting players who might be exiting those academies, so they don't make that cut, they're being released? But do you think that clubs are really actively doing what they should be doing, like appropriately, in terms of supporting their own mental health? Because it's a huge thing, obviously, when you get a release from academy, because there's such a small percentage that really make it into the professional game, but all those lads think that they have that, that kind of like that bit about that edge on them, that they're going to make it into that game, but actually, realistically, one player might make it through. So do you think that academies need to do a little bit more in supporting those who are getting released?
Yeah, I do. I think they do a lot, to be fair. When I was at Scunthorpe for my YTS, you do your education on the side, which, to be honest, you don't really want to do because you think you're just going to be a footballer. But it's there for you. It's down to the player and probably his parents, guardians, to really drive that. A football club can only do so much. They really can. The PFA can only do so much. And there's a lot of programs. The Crystal Palace thing this year, the 11, 12, 13-year-olds. God, that was hard to watch. That was like heartbreaking at 13. You get turned down so much. I got turned down at 19 probably 4 times from football clubs, and you just keep chipping away. Unfortunately, I made it. Some didn't. I think the answer is I think we're doing enough, but not enough. If you know what I mean? Probably the minimum. Like you said, it's less than 1% who make as a pro footballer nowadays. And that less than 1% could just be 10 games in League Two. That's the amount of games. To be a professional in the Premier League, you're looking at 0.01%. So, no one really relates that. It's just about numbers. Either it's top clubs now. Numbers, volume, because we might make that Jude Bellingham. Do you know what I mean? And the rest are on the scrap heap with the other 1,000. So, yeah, it's tough.
I think what you said there about that we do enough but not enough at the same time, I think that sort of leads on to the idea that it's everyone's responsibility to take care of each other's mental health. So whether that's professionally through the PFA, through the NHS, but also asking your teammates if they're okay, asking your manager if they're okay, sort of that conversation that needs to be had across all levels, and it can be had by anyone.
Yeah, no, Meagan, I think you're right. But what I will say on that, asking a 17-year-old to worry about his peers at that age, when you're that selfish and you only care about yourself, is very hard. You'll just you'll be thinking about that kid in the corner who doesn't talk a lot, and you go, oh, he ain't going to make it, but I am. And that's how they are at 17. So then it comes down to the coaches again, and the education they're fed. But it's hard. It's such a young man's and women's sport. We only really learn, like myself, at the end of your career, of what you've learned from your past history, really.
What you're describing is just how brutal it can be. And as a football fan, for years, really, I've probably never really appreciated how vulnerable potentially you are as a player and a coach, and how public the criticism is. You mentioned the Mark Hudson thing there, and managers get sacked all the time. You don't really think about, they have to get out of bed the next day and take the kids to school, and I could lose my job tomorrow, but nobody would know about it apart from people that are close to me. It's such a public environment you're working in, isn't it? Do you think, I'm not expecting you to sort of, cast views on society here, but do you sort of think when you are watching other sports or watching other teams, and the level of support or criticism is high, isn't it? Do you sort of think twice now, considering, when you've been on the other end of it, do you think twice about screaming at the TV or shouting abuse at people, not that you would have previously?
No, it's funny.
Do we need to change the culture of how supporters behave and stuff as well? There just seems to be something.
How are we going to do that, Gary? Because
it's very difficult.
The people who watch football, 90% of them, and this is not you, Gary, but 90% of football fans haven't got a clue. They just see the result at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely.
I went to Wolves Liverpool last night, and I was wrapped around Wolves fans who honestly were saying the most unreal things. And I thought, because they're paid to have an opinion, they're allowed to have the opinion. But then as a footballer, you've got to really think about that and go, right, that bloke, Gary, up the road, he hasn't got a clue what he's on. Am I going to let him affect me? But they do.
Yeah.
They'll have 10 good comments on social media, but the one bad comment they'll think about all week. So very hard, very hard.
And do you hear things as a manager? I know you're so engrossed in the game. Do you hear stuff in from the crowd? Honest, do you hear it and you take it home with you? And
yeah, my probably family hear it more because they're like, oh, God, he was doing this, and I was like, yeah, but I'm trying to educate them. But I listen to my chairman, my dad, and my wife. That's all I listen to, and I know personally if it wasn't good enough. If you listen to everybody, mate, you won't be in the job very long. And that's just the way it is. It's a common fact as a football manager, you aren't going to get the sack. Jose Mourinho's been sacked 7 times and he's the best. So you've just got to enjoy it while it lasts. Easier said than done.
I think as well, the impact there, you talk about Mourinho on a multi-million-pound contract. He's going to be all right when he gets sacked. He's got money in the bank there, but obviously the lower down you go, it's a bigger impact because for a lot of people, they've still got to try and earn a living. So they are looking for that next job. It's not one where they can just sit at home for 6 months and wait for things to happen. So I think in itself, that adds more stress to people as well, both men and females. So yeah.
I agree and I don't agree, Scott, because I have this thing with money and football. I hate it when people bring money into football because it's not Mourinho's fault that he's earned £100 million. It's in fact, it's down to him that he's earned it. What comes with that multi-million pay-up is that I get criticised by probably about 100 fans after a game. Mourinho gets criticised by about 5 million worldwide that he has to take home to. Don't get me wrong, it's a lot easier when you're sitting in your jacuzzi on a night and you're having a glass of champagne and you kind of relax and think, right, I don't have to work again. But you still got the same pressures, you still got the same results to get. And I want to be where Mourinho is, do you know what I mean? So, it's one of them. Whether you got money or not, I'm sure, Matt, there's multi-millionaires out there who've got mental health. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't really matter. So yeah, that's where I am on that. I think football's so diverse from top to bottom, but you're still only playing for the 3 points on the Saturday. It's mad.
You're right, mental health doesn't discriminate, does it? And
no.
So yeah, depends on how much you earn or whatever, it still can affect you significantly. I think we're probably close to wrapping up, aren't we? Just want to start by sort of thanking Russ for his time and his insights, and obviously a lot of the examples are from a football perspective, but hopefully there's some principles in there that people can think about and apply into lots of different areas of life, really. So Russ, really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man, and hopefully you've learned a little bit as well, and people watching can take something away too.
No, that's great. Gary, all I ask, mate, is if you can send me this link, because I'll put it to our club. Do you know what I mean? Because we've got a fantastic academy education scheme with about 170 guys in there, boys and girls, and I think this would be good. Not my insights, but you guys' insights as well.
No, both, I think. Yeah,
along with all the links. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, all the links to support will be great. And yeah, if anyone's, please feel free to share it as far and wide as possible. Even if it helps 1 or 2 people, it's worth the 45 minutes we've taken to do it, I think. So
spot on.
Yeah. No, I appreciate everyone's time. Particularly as I say, Russ, good luck for the rest of the season. Hope the next 2 or 3 months go well. And
thanks guys. And honestly, keep in touch. We do it another time down the line.
Great stuff.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Thanks.
Cheers,